Alright, so today I want to switch lanes from resistance training and re-engage conditioning. There's a couple aspects of conditioning that I want to cover in this video based off of frequently asked questions that I get from a lot of you. First and foremost, let's begin with avoiding overuse injuries. This is commonly discussed in the context of sport and resistance training, but it comes up in conditioning as well. Particularly when we talk about things like running and or rucking, but even some of the low impact means of conditioning like biking, swimming, things of this nature can result in overuse injuries if programmed incorrectly or if done with poor movement patterns. One of the ways I address overuse injuries with my conditioning is by having multiple means of conditioning, similar to lifting, where I have a candidacy list of kind of my primary and alternate means. What criteria should you utilize when developing your candidacy list? Well, it depends on the training effect that you are trying to go for. However, one of the tenets of my conjugate conditioning method to this end is to select a primary means that is either under resistance and or loaded, and then a secondary means that can be more of a mill type of thing where you're just kind of catching up to the device as opposed to driving forward with your own power. This is a poor analogy, but it's something like the difference between pressing, pulling, or squatting on a Smith machine versus just a, free barbell. Even with ostensibly the same amount of plate weight loaded, there is just a lower overall stress to the organism lifting with the Smith machine than there is with the free weight. Like all the proprioception and additional stability and controlling the bar path and all those little things add up to a meaningful amount of extra stimulus. And it's kind of similar when you're like running, rucking, walking, whatever, outside, pushing yourself against the pavement versus having a mill move underneath you and control the pace, and you just kind of have to match it with your own movement. So what does this candidacy list look like? Well, for my primary movement in the past, of course, running was one. Outside, that is either, unladen with kit or with ruck. Then of course, rucking would be another one. Currently, my primary resisted conditioning means is the bike, typically the Lifefitness or Pre-Core model. I'm actually not a big fan of Pelotons, but that's a separate discussion. And then I usually just kind of auto-regulate using that and the Stepmill as my primary and alternates, depending on a variety of factors. So how does this method kind of attenuate overuse injuries? Well, of course, overuse injuries are bound to happen with repeated poor movement patterns, but overuse injuries will also occur eventually over time when you train with resistance or under load. So a best practice to avoid such things with resistance training is you have a candidacy list of similar but different movement patterns so you can still get relatively the same training stimulus, but without necessarily grinding the same tissues over and over and over again. So like for instance, you might one day do hammer strength rows, then another day do T-bar rows, then another day do close grip bent rows. Not exactly the same thing, but still generally hitting the same area, generally giving you the same training stimulus, but not using precisely the same tissues, so you avoid that long-term grind and overuse injury potential that you get as an experienced trainer. I kind of do the same thing here with my candidacy list of conditioning means. If I bike every day, because it's very quad intensive, particularly like the VMO down by the knee, I do end up getting, you know, some slight medial knee issues. Whereas if I break that up every couple of days with a step mill, I don't have that problem because I'm not grinding the same tissues. So that's it, folks. You know, a lot of people kind of have their go-to conditioning means. You got people that just run, or you got people that just bike. And in terms of the training effect, that'll work. But again, it's consistency, folks. That's a superpower. And you can't have consistency without sustainable practices. Once your knees start hurting, once you start getting shin splints, that's pretty much it for your day-to-day running for at least a little while. My way around the shortcoming of potential overuse injuries is to create a candidacy list of conditioning means that I can rotate day to day as needed in order to stay in the fight. Thanks for watching.